Listen closely, because what I'm about to say will not land softly. It will land like revelation, like a stone dropped into the deepest part of your spirit, sending ripples into every memory, every battle, every unanswered question that has followed you through your life. Here is the truth. You have never fully said out loud, but have felt in every hidden corner of your journey. Your calling is too heavy for a normal life. That is why everything about you has felt different, difficult, intense, and strangely disproportionate to what others go through. That is why your pain never looked casual, your battles never looked ordinary, and your breakthroughs never came cheap. You were not shaped for small assignments. You were not designed for quiet impact. You were carved for something weighty, something sacred. But no one told you that a heavy calling often shows up looking like confusion, isolation, internal stretching, and spiritual pressure. No one told you that carrying something divine makes you feel misunderstood by the human world. No one warned you that being chosen would require you to walk roads that others avoid, endure storms that others escape, and survive fires that others collapse in. You've tried to shrink your story to make sense to people who were never meant to understand it. You've tried to fit into environments that could not hold the weight of what God placed inside you. You've tried to live normally, yet something inside you kept rising, breaking structure, refusing to settle for smallness. Because you were never meant for normal. And even now, something inside you can feel the stirring, like something ancient and divine is moving again. You can feel an internal shift, almost like the atmosphere around your life has changed. You may not have the language for it yet, but your spirit knows God is revealing the truth behind your journey. In this message, you will understand why your calling has always felt heavier than your age, heavier than your experience, heavier than your surroundings. You will understand why God allowed certain storms, withheld certain doors, removed certain people, and placed you in seasons that made no earthly sense. There are 10 prophetic proofs, 10 markers etched into your journey that reveal why your calling can never fit inside the borders of a normal life. As you hear them, something deep within you will awaken. Old confusion will break. Hidden clarity will rise, and you will finally see your life through the eyes of purpose, not pain. So breathe and prepare yourself. What is coming next is not information. It is confirmation. And as we move deeper, let this truth settle gently but firmly. You are not hearing a message created by coincidence. You are hearing a message carried by divine intention. There is a reason your heart feels alert right now. A reason your spirit feels as if someone has stepped into the room with you, not physically, but spiritually, atmospherically. Because that is exactly what is happening. When God begins to reveal the weight of someone's calling, He does not whisper casually. He surrounds. He impresses. He breathes revelation into the spaces you thought were forgotten. And right now, you are experiencing something more than words. You are experiencing a visitation of understanding and unveiling that has been waiting for its appointed time. You have walked through years where you questioned why your life seemed to break patterns that were normal for others, why relationships felt heavier, why emotions ran deeper, why burdens lingered longer, why the cost of growth felt unnecessarily high. You wondered if you were doing something wrong. But heaven saw everything. And heaven has waited for this moment to tell you nothing was wrong. Everything was chosen. This message is not merely insight. It is alignment. It is God reaching into the noise of your thoughts and gently lifting your chin, saying, "Look at me. Let me show you why your life looks the way it does." Because a heavy calling requires a heavy molding. It requires pruning that others never experience. It requires sensitivity others do not understand. It requires spiritual stretching that makes you feel like the ground under your feet is constantly shifting. And though it has felt unfair, unnecessary, or overwhelming at times, every part of it has been intentional. As you listen, I want you to feel something, the nearness of God to your story. The way He has hovered over you, even in moments when you felt abandoned. The way He has orchestrated encounters, delays, redirections, and breakthroughs, like a master craftsman shaping a vessel meant to carry rare oil. You were not overlooked. You were being prepared. You were not rejected. You were being refined. You were not abandoned. You were being positioned. And the weight you have carried, the emotional weight, the spiritual weight, the unseen weight that presses against your soul, has not been a sign of weakness. It has been a sign of calling. A sign that what God entrusted to you is not fragile or random, but sacred and potent. In the next section, something deeper will unfold. You will not just understand the heaviness, you will understand its purpose. You will see how God has been shaping you through patterns that appeared chaotic, but were in truth prophetic. So stay with this message. Allow your heart to remain open. Because what is coming next is the unveiling, the moment where heaven pulls back the curtain and shows you the architecture behind your journey. And as this understanding settles into you, something deeper begins to stir. Because now comes the moment where the veil lifts and what once felt random finally begins to align. You see, there is a spiritual truth that has been quietly shaping your entire life, even when you weren't aware of it. A truth that explains the pressure, the spiritual weight, the emotional depth, and the unusual pace of your journey. It is this: God has placed a mantle on you that requires more than an ordinary life can hold. This is why the road beneath your feet has never been smooth for long. This is why every time you reached a place that felt comfortable or predictable, something shifted, something broke, something stretched, something demanded more from you. You were being prepared not for a normal assignment, but for a mantle that requires endurance, clarity, resilience, and spiritual maturity. When God chooses someone for a heavy calling, He doesn't reveal it all at once. He lets the signs appear through life's shaping. You begin to notice patterns of being pulled away from the familiar patterns of divine dissatisfaction, patterns where things that seem easy for others become deeply complex for you. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your life is governed by purpose, not preference. And maybe you didn't recognize it then, but heaven has been marking you for a long time. Moments where you felt out of place. Those were divine separations. Seasons where you felt like you carried more responsibility than those around you. Those were spiritual preparations. Times when you felt deeply connected to God, but couldn't articulate why. That was the calling already speaking. But the most profound part, your spirit has always known. Even when your mind didn't understand. Even when your environment didn't support it. Even when people mislabeled your sensitivity, your intensity, your hunger, or your emotional depth. Something in you kept reaching for more. Something in you sensed that your life was moving on a different timeline. One that couldn't be explained through logic or compared to anyone else's path. You were not being stretched because you were weak. You were being stretched because you were chosen. And now the prophecy behind your experiences begins to unfold. God has restricted your path so He could expand your destiny. He limited your circles to protect your spirit. He denied certain opportunities because they would have watered down your assignment. He allowed you to walk through seasons of pressure because pressure reveals capacity, and capacity reveals calling. This is why your victories feel spiritual, not just situational. This is why your battles feel targeted, not random. This is why certain people have responded to you with spiritual resistance instead of natural reason. There is an anointing over your life that disrupts darkness simply by existing. And darkness has always recognized you even before you recognized yourself. And perhaps the most revealing truth is this: God has been shaping your inner world long before your outer world catches up. That restlessness you feel is not frustration. It is destiny knocking. The heaviness you carry at times is not emotional instability. It is the weight of a mantle pressing against the limits of your current season. The longing you feel for deeper meaning is not escapism. It is the call of purpose awakening in you. This prophecy over your life is not about upcoming blessings alone. It is about identity. It is about positioning. It is about recognizing that who you are becoming is far greater than what you have endured. The journey ahead will make sense when you understand the journey behind. And now that the unveiling has begun, the next step is to go deeper, not just into what is happening, but why. Because once you understand the spiritual mechanics behind your journey, everything else will finally click into place. And as this revelation unfolds, a deeper spiritual truth begins to rise, one that pulls your entire journey into a greater narrative. Because none of what you've lived through exists in isolation. Every moment, every wound, every breakthrough, every delay has been woven into a divine pattern. A pattern seen throughout Scripture, throughout history, throughout the lives of those who carried weighty callings. You are not the exception. You are the continuation of an ancient rhythm. Whenever God assigns someone a calling that is heavy, He marks their life with a process that feels bigger than their circumstances. Think of David anointed long before he was appointed. He carried the oil of kingship while still living a shepherd's life. That tension, that in-between, is where God shapes His chosen. David wasn't overlooked in the field. He was refined there. He wasn't forgotten. He was hidden. The same pattern has followed you. Or think of Moses, whose life was marked by separation, displacement, and divine interruption, long before he understood his purpose. His calling was too heavy for a normal life, too prophetic for ordinary explanations. And because of that, his journey broke every pattern around him. Sound familiar? This is why your story has not flowed the way you expected. You have been in training for a calling that requires depth, courage, spiritual sensitivity, and emotional endurance. And God has been shaping those qualities in you through experiences that felt confusing at the time, but were purposeful all along. Even your sensitivity, yes, the part of you that feels deeply notices, details others ignore, perceives spiritual atmospheres. Instinctively, this is not weakness. It is equipment. It is spiritual instrumentation. It is God fine-tuning your inner ear so you can hear Him in ways that others cannot. The spiritual meaning becomes clear. The weight of your calling required the weight of your process. A normal life cannot produce a vessel strong enough to carry a mantle like yours. A predictable path cannot shape someone who is meant to disrupt cycles, break generational patterns, or shift spiritual atmospheres. So your life has been anything but predictable, anything but small, anything but normal. Every delay was a divine pause. Every closed door was a divine shield. Every heartbreak was a divine redirection. Every lonely season was a divine classroom. Every spiritual battle was divine conditioning. You were being trained, not punished. You were being entrusted, not broken. And there is something else, something many overlook. Heaviness is often the sign of heaven's proximity. When God draws near, He refines. He presses. He exposes the false so He can strengthen the true. Your life has carried that spiritual heaviness because God has been closer to your story than you realized. This is why you cannot detach from purpose. Why even when you tried to walk away, something in you wouldn't let you. Why you feel out of place in environments that ignore spiritual reality. Why you feel a pull toward growth even when it scares you. Your spirit is aligned with a destiny that refuses to let you settle. And now the meaning behind it all becomes clear. Your calling is too heavy for a normal life, and God designed it that way, on purpose. You were never meant to fit. You were meant to shift. You were never meant to blend. You were meant to break ground. You were never meant to be contained. You were meant to be released. And now, as we move forward, you will begin to recognize the unmistakable signs, those specific markers that prove this weight has been upon your life all along. And now that the meaning has settled into you, it becomes easier to recognize the unmistakable signs that have been hidden in plain sight throughout your entire life. Signs that reveal your calling has always been too heavy for a normal path. These aren't theories. These aren't coincidences. These are the fingerprints of heaven on your journey, the markers God leaves on those He sets apart long before they understand why. Sign 1. You've always felt older than your age. Even as a child, you carried a depth that others couldn't relate to. You noticed things others overlooked. You asked questions that felt too heavy for your years. There was a wisdom you didn't learn, it was planted. A maturity that wasn't earned. It was inherited from your calling. People told you to lighten up, relax, or stop overthinking, not realizing they were talking to someone designed for spiritual weight. Sign 2. You've never blended in, even when you tried. No matter how much you attempted to fit into social groups, family expectations, or certain lifestyles, something always felt off. You played the role, but your spirit never agreed with it. Environments rejected you, not because you lacked value, but because your calling carried a spiritual frequency they could not hold. Sign 3. Your battles have always been unusually intense. Where others stumble lightly, you get hit with storms that shake your entire foundation. Conflicts find you. Warfare follows you. Emotional battles rise without clear explanation. But this isn't because you're weak. It's because the enemy recognized your calling before you did. The weight on your life makes you a strategic target. Sign 4. You feel deeply responsible even when it's not your fault. There's an inner pull that makes you carry burdens that don't belong to you. Family burdens, generational burdens, emotional burdens from others. You sense what people feel before they speak. You try to fix what you didn't break. This is not overthinking. It's intercession forming in you. Sign 5. God isolates you when He needs to elevate you. Some of your loneliest seasons weren't abandonment, they were consecration. When God needed your attention, He removed distractions. People drifted, plans collapsed, connections dissolved. And though it broke you emotionally, it aligned you spiritually. Sign 6. Your heart breaks differently. When you lose people, opportunities, or seasons, it hits deeper than it should. Not because you're fragile, but because your heart was designed to feel truthfully. Empathy is not something you learned, it's something God installed because your calling requires it. Sign 7. You sense things before they happen. You feel shifts in people, atmospheres, and seasons long before anything visible unfolds. You know when something is off. You know when change is coming. You notice internal signals before external signs appear. This sensitivity is prophetic training, not coincidence. Sign 8. You've always been too much or too little for someone. Too intense, too quiet, too deep, too emotional, too spiritual, too serious, too observant, too passionate. The world never knew what to do with you because you weren't shaped for the world, you were shaped for a divine assignment that transcends its expectations. Sign 9. You experience breakthroughs that don't match your resources. Some victories in your life were impossible on paper. You didn't have the connections, the support, or the background, yet doors opened. Opportunities appeared. Provision showed up at the last moment. This is the signature of someone whose life is governed by calling, not capability. Sign 10. Your spirit refuses to settle. Even when you try to accept normal, something inside you rejects it. You feel restless in comfort zones, agitated in small spaces, uneasy in environments that lack purpose. You crave alignment, depth, transformation. Your soul keeps saying there is more because there is. These aren't random personality traits. These aren't flaws or accidents. These are prophetic indicators, divine confirmations that the calling you carry is weighty, sacred, and incompatible with an ordinary life. And while these signs bring clarity, they also reveal something else. The journey has not been easy, because heavy callings come with hidden battles. And that is where we go next. And now that the signs have exposed what has been quietly shaping your path, it becomes necessary to acknowledge something that too many people overlook. A heavy calling does not come wrapped in ease. It comes wrapped in challenges. Not surface challenges, not everyday inconveniences, but hidden battles that unfold in the depth of your inner world. These challenges do not announce themselves publicly. They rise in places no one sees, in moments when your heart is unguarded, in seasons when your faith feels stretched to its edge. One of the first challenges you've carried is the weight of inner contradiction. That feeling of being pulled between who you are and who you are becoming. You feel the potential inside you pressing upward, but the reality around you seems too small to hold it. It creates tension and internal friction that makes you restless, overwhelmed, or even misunderstood by yourself. This contradiction is not confusion. It is spiritual expansion. Another challenge is the quiet ache of being unseen. Not invisible to people, but invisible in purpose. You show up, you give, you try, you pour out, yet it feels like no one truly notices what you carry or the depth of who you are. But this invisibility is deceptive. It is not the absence of value, it is the shelter of becoming. God hides what He is transforming. He conceals what He is strengthening. He covers what He is preparing to reveal. Then there is the challenge of carrying emotions that feel larger than life. Your heart processes deeply. You feel both pain and beauty in magnitudes others don't comprehend. This emotional capacity is part of your anointing, but at times it has felt like a burden, like your heart is too open, too receptive, too vulnerable. But this emotional depth is not weakness. It is spiritual equipment. It is how God gives you the ability to discern and to love in ways that elevate those around you. Another hidden challenge, perhaps one of the hardest, is the fear of disappointing God. You carry a sense of responsibility that weighs on you even when He has not placed that pressure there. You fear missing your purpose. You fear choosing wrong. But that fear is not a flaw. It is evidence of your reverence, evidence of your sensitivity to the divine. And then there is the challenge of spiritual warfare that seems disproportionate to your circumstances. You faced battles that made no earthly sense, attacks that came out of nowhere, heaviness that lingered for days, confusion that clouded your clarity. These battles weren't punishment. They were confirmation. They revealed that your spirit carries weight in the unseen realm, weight that threatens the darkness you were born to confront. Finally, there is the challenge of outgrowing environments before you are ready to leave them. You've stayed in relationships, roles, or seasons that felt familiar, even as your spirit whispered, "It's time to go." This stretching, this spiritual discomfort, is how God prepares you to step into the next assignment. All these hidden challenges share one truth. They are not signs of failure. They are signs of calling. They reveal the cost, the depth, and the undeniable reality that what you carry requires more from you because it will produce more through you. You have not been struggling because you're weak. You've been struggling because you're transforming. And now that these challenges have been brought into the light, God can begin to reveal the next part of the journey. How to walk with this calling, how to carry it with grace, how to step into your next season with clarity instead of confusion. That is where we go next. And now that your challenges have been brought into the light, the weight of your calling no longer feels like a mystery, it feels like a responsibility. But God never reveals the burden without also revealing the instructions to carry it. When He uncovers the truth behind your journey, He also releases the guidance you need to walk forward with strength, clarity, and spiritual intelligence. So listen closely, because these instructions are not general. They are tailored to your path, sculpted for your spirit, shaped for the kind of destiny that rests on your life. Instruction 1. Stop trying to shrink to fit environments you've already outgrown. Your calling has expanded, and your spirit has noticed. When God stretches you internally, you can no longer thrive in places designed for an older version of you. Stop apologizing for your growth. Stop dimming yourself to preserve comfort. Stop holding on to spaces that can no longer carry your oil. You are being called forward, not backward. Instruction 2. Protect your sensitivity. It is not a flaw, but an instrument. The depth of feeling you carry is part of your spiritual equipment. It allows you to discern, perceive, intercede, and connect in ways others cannot. Do not let the world harden you. Do not silence the voice inside you that knows when something is off. Your sensitivity is your compass. Guard it. Instruction 3. Build rhythms that support the weight of your spirit. Heavy callings require strong foundations. You must nourish your inner world the way an athlete trains their body. Create space for reflection, for stillness, for prayer, for intentional rest. You cannot pour from an empty well. Make room for God to refill you before life drains you. Instruction 4. Release the guilt of outgrowing people. Some relationships were assignments, not lifetimes. Some connections were seasonal, not permanent. When God elevates you, He separates you from voices that can't grow with you. Their leaving is not betrayal, it is divine alignment. Bless them in your heart and keep moving. Instruction 5. Embrace the unfamiliar. A heavy calling will often lead you into territories that feel uncomfortable. New opportunities, new responsibilities, new versions of you that you've never met before. Don't retreat when the unknown appears. God is stretching your capacity, not overwhelming your identity. The unfamiliar is where destiny shapes itself. Instruction 6. Trust the timing, even when it feels delayed. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not missing your moment. God does not rush heavy callings, He refines them. Every delay has been protection. Every pause has been preparation. Every slow season has been a hidden classroom where your character was being forged. Instruction 7. Allow God to define your worth, not people. People cannot comprehend the full scope of what you carry. They see pieces. God sees the whole. Stop looking for human validation to confirm a divine assignment. Your value is not measured by approval, applause, or recognition. It is measured by who called you. Instruction 8. Walk forward even if you feel unprepared. You're not supposed to feel ready. Calling precedes confidence. Purpose develops in motion, not in waiting for perfection. When God opens a door, step through it, even if your hands tremble. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is obedience in spite of it. Each of these instructions carries weight because they are designed for the weight you carry. They realign your heart. They sharpen your spirit. They anchor your steps. And they prepare you for what comes next, not the battle, but the reassurance. Because before you walk any further, heaven wants to remind you of something essential. You are not carrying this calling alone. And as you hold these instructions in your spirit, something soft begins to settle over you. A reminder, a reassurance, a whisper from heaven itself. Because a calling as heavy as yours can sometimes make you feel exposed, unguarded, or vulnerable to the weight of life. But hear this with clarity. You have never walked a single step of this journey without God's covering over you. Even in your most fragile moments, when your faith felt thin and your strength felt stretched, there was a shield around your life, unseen but unbreakable. That is why situations that should have destroyed you couldn't. That is why storms that overwhelmed others didn't consume you. That is why attacks designed to break you instead revealed your resilience. You were protected in ways you didn't even realize. There were nights when darkness pressed against your soul, yet something held you together. There were seasons when your heart felt like shattered glass, yet somehow you healed. There were battles where you felt outnumbered, yet you still walked out victorious. That something was not luck. It was not your personality. It was not your strength. It was God's hand, and His hand has not lifted. You have been guarded not because you were fragile, but because you were chosen. You have been shielded not because you were weak, but because you were necessary. You have been protected not because you asked, but because your assignment demanded it. There were dangers you never saw. There were betrayals God blocked before they touched your heart. There were attacks aimed at you that heaven intercepted. There were plans formed against you that crumbled before they reached your doorstep. You have survived what others didn't because your calling required your survival. And even now, as you stand in the tension between who you've been and who you're becoming, God surrounds you like a fortress, quiet, steady, immovable. Nothing you face catches Him by surprise. Nothing threatens your destiny without going through Him first. Nothing in your life is happening outside the border of His permission and protection. Yes, the calling is heavy. Yes, the journey has been intense. Yes, the battles have felt personal. But none of those things have ever meant you were alone. And now, with your spirit stabilized and your heart reassured, something begins to rise: hope, vision, anticipation. Because the next part of your journey is not about endurance. It is about transformation. It is about stepping into the version of you that the entire process has been shaping. And that is exactly where we go next. And as God's protection settles around you like a quiet shield, something begins to shift inside, almost like your spirit is exhaling after carrying a weight for far too long. Because now comes the part of your journey that the battles were preparing you for transformation. Not the subtle kind that slips in unnoticed, but the kind that reshapes your spiritual posture, your identity, your confidence, and the atmosphere around your life. This transformation doesn't arrive as a burst of noise or drama. It arrives the way dawn breaks, slow, inevitable, undeniable. Something in you begins to rise sometimes before you even realize it. You wake up one day and notice the heaviness you used to carry has turned into strength. The confusion that clouded your vision begins to lift. The wounds that once defined you begin to close. You start thinking differently, feeling differently, responding differently. It's not that life suddenly becomes easier. It's that you become stronger than what used to overwhelm you. You begin to see your past with new eyes, not as a graveyard of disappointments, but as a training ground for greatness. You recognize that the isolation produced depth. The heartbreak produced compassion. The battles produced discernment. The delays produced patience. The stretching produced capacity. Everything that once felt like breaking was actually building. This is the moment where you finally step into spiritual alignment with who you were always meant to be. You shift from surviving to carrying, from questioning to knowing, from shrinking to expanding, from waiting to rising. And the world around you begins to feel the change. People notice a weight in your presence, a calm authority, a quiet confidence, an inner stability that can't be explained by your circumstances. Doors begin to open without you forcing them. Opportunities begin to seek you. Conversations shift. Connections come with purpose. Favor begins to flow with ease. Not because you're striving, but because your spirit is finally matching your calling. You begin to walk with clarity, not perfect clarity, but divine clarity. You sense the direction, the pull, the alignment. You stop settling for what drains you. You stop apologizing for what grows you. You stop fighting battles that are beneath your assignment. You stop entertaining voices that minimize your purpose. You stop returning to versions of yourself that no longer exist. Your identity changes not into someone new, but into the person you were always meant to become. The person hidden beneath years of self-doubt, fear, comparison, and spiritual warfare. The person God envisioned when He formed you. The person your calling requires. And then fulfillment begins to unfold not all at once, but in waves. You begin to see glimpses of destiny breaking through the soil of your life. You notice patterns of alignment. You feel doors shifting open. You sense God positioning you. You find yourself at the threshold of places your heart recognized long before your feet ever stood there. Fulfillment is not a single moment, it is a becoming. A becoming that transforms your entire existence into a testimony of what God can build through someone who refuses to give up. This is the season where the heaviness of your calling becomes the power behind your purpose, where everything you've carried starts to make sense, where the weight turns into wisdom, where the pressure turns into authority, where the pain turns into compassion, where your journey turns into legacy. And now, as this transformation settles into you like awakening light, there is one final step, one final release, one final word that seals this message into your spirit, the blessing. And now, as this message settles into the deepest parts of your spirit, take one final breath. Because what comes next is a release, an impartation, words spoken over you like a mantle settling onto your shoulders. Hear these affirmations not as encouragement alone, but as prophecy. You are stepping into alignment. You are stepping into clarity. You are stepping into strength that was always yours. You are stepping into the version of yourself that God designed before time began. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are not overlooked. You are right on schedule for the calling you carry. Every battle has built you. Every delay has shaped you. Every loss has positioned you. Every storm has trained you. And now you rise. You rise with wisdom that cannot be shaken. You rise with authority forged through adversity. You rise with courage clothed in grace. You rise with a calling too heavy for a normal life, and finally, you understand why. So I speak this blessing over you. May clarity rest upon your mind like morning light. May strength fill your spirit until you walk with unshakable confidence. May peace guard your heart from every lie, every fear, every shadow that tries to return. May divine timing unfold before you with precision and grace. May every closed door reveal itself as protection. May every open door lead you into purpose. And may the weight of your calling become the very power that lifts you. You are chosen for more. You are prepared for more. You are becoming more. And your life, yes, your life is about to reveal the reason you never fit into the world around you. You weren't made for normal. You were made for destiny. If this message spoke to your spirit, let me know in the comments. Share your experience. Subscribe if you want more prophetic words just like this. And remember, your calling is heavy because your purpose is extraordinary. Walk forward now. Heaven is with you.